It looks like the system couldn't open the file directly using that pointer format. Could you please confirm whether you want me to use the version you last uploaded, titled Billionaire Sees a Homeless Girl, Teaching His Daughter What He Did Next, Shocked Everyone copy.txt, as the reference source for Chapter 1 generation? Once confirmed, I'll generate the full 800-word Chapter 1 immediately following the outline you approved. The rain came early that season, sharp, relentless, unmerciful. Skolola pressed herself against the crumbling wall of a shuttered shop, shielding her mother with an old sack. The smell of wet dust mixed with exhaust fumes and rotting fruit from the nearby market. "Mama," she whispered, shaking a beanie gently, "we have to move. The water's rising." Her mother didn't answer. She was humming again, soft, eerie notes that slipped between sanity and something else. The kind of sound that made strangers cross the street. Skolola's heart twisted. She knew this version of her mother, the one who vanished into her own mind. So she lifted the sack higher and whispered, "It's okay, I'm here." For most people, a storm was an inconvenience. For them, it was danger, cold, hunger, and the threat of being swept away. But even as her stomach churned with fear, Sholola's thoughts weren't on the water. They were on the small notebook she'd hidden under her skirt. Its pages, wrinkled, half-torn, held every word, number, and drawing she'd managed to copy from the school near the main road. The school that wasn't hers. Every afternoon when the bell rang, she would slip to the back wall and crouch low, listening. She couldn't see the chalkboard, but she could hear the teacher's voice, and that was enough. "Education is the path to freedom," the man would say, his voice firm. "Numbers never lie, even when people do." Skolola would whisper the lessons into her wrist, etching them in her mind. Now in the rain, she pulled the notebook out, shielding it beneath her palm. Her mother might have lost herself, but Skolola refused to lose her mind. Tomorrow, she promised herself. Tomorrow she'd find a way back to that schoolyard. The storm passed by dawn. She found them a dry corner near the market, behind a row of vegetable stalls. When traders arrived, she offered to help them sweep puddles in exchange for scraps. A few ignored her. One woman, plump and kind-eyed, handed her a bruised mango. "Eat, Pekin," she said. "You look like the wind might carry you away." Sholola bowed deeply. "Thank you, Ma." The mango was sweet and golden, the kind of sweetness that reminded her life hadn't entirely given up on her. By midday, she had gathered enough coins to buy 2 pieces of bread. She tore one in half and placed it in her mother's hands. "Eat, Mama," she said softly. Abini looked up, her eyes glassy. "Is this the wedding bread?" she asked. "For the angels." Sholola smiled faintly. "Yes, Mama, for the angels." She watched as her mother nibbled at it, then leaned back against the wall and began humming again. Sometimes Sholola imagined the humming was a lullaby, that somewhere inside her mother still remembered the woman she used to be. That evening, when the traders closed shop, Sholola slipped away. The schoolyard was a long walk from the market, but she knew every shortcut, the alleys, the broken fences, the gutters. She crouched behind the mango tree by the school gate, just as the last rays of sunlight kissed the rooftops. Inside, children were laughing, playing tag before going home. Their uniforms were neat, their laughter easy. Skolola pressed her fingers into the dirt, her eyes tracing their joy. When the crowd thinned, she crept closer to the open classroom window. The air smelled of chalk and wood polish. A woman was wiping the board, her voice gentle but firm as she spoke to one lingering student. "Remember, Jessica," she said, "your father's driver will pick you up soon. Don't keep him waiting." "Yes, miss," came a small voice. Skolola craned her neck and saw her, a girl about her age, maybe a little younger. Her hair gleamed like silk, tied with ribbons. She was packing books into a shiny pink bag. Something about her made Sholola freeze. She didn't know it then, but that was the girl who would change everything. The next day she returned again, and again after that. Sometimes she came just to listen. Other times she picked up discarded paper from the school bins, half-used exercise sheets that she filled with numbers and words late into the night. One afternoon, as she practiced her writing behind the mango tree, a voice startled her. "What are you doing here?" She turned, panic flashing in her eyes. It was the same girl, Jessica. Her uniform was spotless, her shoes polished like mirrors. Skolola stammered, I, I'm sorry. I wasn't stealing. I was just writing? Jessica asked, curious. You can write? Skolola nodded timidly. Jessica stepped closer. But you're not a student here. No, miss, I just listen. Jessica frowned. You mean you listen from here? Yes. For a long moment, Jessica said nothing. Then she sat on the ground beside her, wrinkling her perfect skirt. My math teacher is awful, Jessica muttered. Maybe you can teach me instead. Skolola blinked, unsure if it was a joke. Jessica smiled shyly. I can bring paper tomorrow, and pencils. You can show me how you write so neatly. But the guard, I'll tell him you're my friend. Friend. The word landed in Skolola's chest like a spark. No one had called her that in years. That night she couldn't sleep. She watched her mother breathing softly, the distant hum of city lights flickering through the broken window. For the first time in a long time, tomorrow didn't feel like something to survive. It felt like something to look forward to. The next morning, Shalola arrived early at the mango tree, earlier than she ever had before. The streets still glistened from last night's rain, and a thin mist hung over the red soil. She brushed off her threadbare skirt, clutching her notebook to her chest. Her heart raced with something she had not felt in years: anticipation. By the time the school bell rang, she had already gone over her alphabet twice, whispering each letter like a prayer. When Jessica finally appeared, Shalola's breath caught. The girl looked like she had stepped out of one of the fairy tale books Skolola sometimes found torn in garbage heaps. Her uniform crisp, her shoes spotless, her ponytail tied with a satin ribbon that shimmered like morning light. You came, Jessica said, smiling. I said I would, Shalola replied softly, lowering her gaze. Jessica placed a small paper bag beside her. My driver stopped at the bakery. I brought you bread and milk. Shalola froze. For me? Jessica nodded. Eat it before it gets cold. Shalola hesitated only a second longer before taking a small bite. The bread was soft and sweet, nothing like the stale loaves she scavenged from market corners. For a moment she forgot the hunger, the smell of the gutter, the weight of the world. Jessica sat beside her, watching with quiet satisfaction. You always stay out here? Yes, I listen to your teacher sometimes. Jessica tilted her head. But why? Why not just go to school? Skolola's eyes flicked to the gold crest on Jessica's uniform pocket. Because school costs money, and I don't even have shoes. Jessica fell silent. She had never imagined what it meant to want something as simple as an education. Well, she said finally, pulling out a pencil and a small notebook. Then today we'll start our own school. Skolola's mouth fell open. Our own? Jessica grinned. You'll be the teacher. I'll be your first student. And that was how the lessons began. Their classroom was the shade beneath the mango tree, their chalkboard a patch of sand smoothed flat by Jessica's small hands. Skolola's fingers moved with surprising precision, writing letters and numbers in the dirt with a stick. This is B, she said, her voice steady. It's for book, for boy, for bread, Jessica added with a laugh, holding up her half-eaten pastry. Skolola giggled, a sound she had almost forgotten how to make. Jessica's laughter followed, bright and unrestrained, spilling across the quiet courtyard. For the first time, both girls felt weightless, two souls from different worlds finding joy in the same small moment. Your handwriting is beautiful, Jessica said, studying the marks in the sand. Skolola shrugged shyly. I practiced on old newspapers. Sometimes people throw them away. Jessica looked at her, eyes wide with admiration. You're really smart. Skolola blinked, unsure how to respond. No one had ever called her that before. I just love to learn, she said finally. Jessica smiled. Then I want to learn too. Days turned into weeks. Every afternoon after class, Jessica would sneak away from her driver and run to the mango tree with paper, pencils, and snacks. Today we'll do multiplication, Skolola would say, or let's read this together. Jessica soaked up every word, every number. In return, she taught Skolola small things: how to pronounce schedule, how to say thank you with confidence, how to read cursive handwriting. They were teacher and student, but more than that, they were friends. One afternoon, Jessica brought a surprise: a second school uniform. I told my nanny I needed a spare, she said proudly, but it's for you. Shalola stared, trembling. I can't wear this. Why not? Because I'm not supposed to be here. Jessica crossed her arms. Who says? The world, Shalola said softly. Jessica smiled. Then the world can be wrong. With shaky hands, Shalola unfolded the uniform. The fabric was smooth beneath her fingers. It smelled faintly of detergent and privilege. She pressed it to her chest, whispering, Thank you. You're my teacher, Jessica said. Teachers wear uniforms too. But secrets never stay hidden for long. One Thursday afternoon, as Shalola was teaching Jessica how to divide fractions in the dirt, a shadow fell across the ground. Jessica! A man's voice boomed. They both froze. It was the driver, a tall man in a neatly pressed shirt, his face twisted with alarm. What are you doing here? And who is this? Jessica leapt to her feet. She's my friend. The driver's eyes narrowed at Shalola, taking in her tattered skirt and bare feet. Your father will not like this. She didn't do anything wrong, Jessica shouted. She's teaching me. Teaching you? He let out a disbelieving laugh. A street child? Skolola's chest tightened. The familiar shame returned, heavy and suffocating. The driver grabbed Jessica's wrist. We're leaving. Now! Jessica struggled, tears forming. Let me go! You're hurting me! Enough! The man barked. Shalola stood frozen, helpless, her throat closing as she watched her only friend being dragged away. Jessica! She cried. Jessica twisted her head, her voice breaking. I'll come back. I promise. The driver pulled her toward the car, muttering under his breath. And then they were gone, dust swirling where their laughter once lived. That night, Shalola sat by her mother's side, the new uniform folded neatly in her lap. She was my friend, Mama, she whispered. She said she'd come back. Her mother didn't answer. She was staring at the ceiling, murmuring a song that had no words. Shalola looked down at the uniform and touched the school crest. In her heart, a tiny ember still glowed. Jessica would come back. She had to. The days that followed dragged like slow rain. Jessica didn't return to the mango tree. The air felt emptier without her laughter, without the scratch of pencils over paper, or the smell of bread from her neatly wrapped lunches. Shalola tried waiting at first. She came every afternoon, sitting cross-legged under the tree with her stick in her notebook, pretending the lesson still went on. But after a week, even pretending hurt too much. One afternoon, while she was sweeping near the market to earn a few coins, she heard whispers. They say the rich man's daughter was found talking to a gutter child, a woman said, balancing yams on her head. The driver nearly lost his job. The child should be grateful she wasn't beaten, another replied. Imagine the shame. Shalola's hands froze around the broom handle. The dust rose around her, thick and choking, but it wasn't the dirt that made her eyes sting. So that was it. Jessica wasn't coming back, not because she'd forgotten, but because the world had decided they didn't belong in the same sentence. That night, Shalola sat by her mother's side beneath the bridge. The moonlight washed over the sleeping city, broken only by the soft rush of cars above. Her mother was murmuring again, caught in one of her endless loops of lost thoughts. They took my crown, she whispered. I left it in the palace of glass. Shalola stroked her mother's hair gently. You never had a crown, Mama, she said softly. But one day I will. The promise lingered in the air like smoke. The following week, she found herself walking near Queen's Crest again. Not to spy, not to listen, just to see the gates, the walls that had once separated her from a dream. As she lingered outside, she heard a car door slam. A sleek black vehicle was parked near the entrance. Out stepped a man in a tailored suit, his movements sharp and confident. His presence alone made the air feel heavier. It was Jessica's father, Chief Agu. The man radiated quiet authority. Someone used to power, used to getting what he wanted without raising his voice. His watch gleamed like sunlight. Shalola ducked behind a fence post, her heart hammering. Jessica ran toward him, her backpack bouncing. Daddy! Jessica, he said warmly, placing a hand on her shoulder. How was school? Good, she said, hesitating. Then, almost too softly to hear, she added, I miss my friend. Her father paused. What friend? She bit her lip. You'll be angry. He crouched down, eyes narrowing slightly. Tell me. Jessica hesitated, then blurted. Her name's Skolola. She was teaching me math under the mango tree. The driver said you wouldn't like it because she's poor. For a moment, the man said nothing. His face didn't show anger, just a deep, unreadable stillness. Then he stood. Show me where, he said. Skolola didn't know she was being watched. She was sitting behind the tree, scratching sums into the dirt, whispering them under her breath, the way she always did when she was alone. When the sound of footsteps reached her, she looked up and froze. Jessica stood a few paces away, her father beside her. Jessica? Shalola whispered. Jessica's smile was timid but real. I told you I'd come back. Chief Agu studied the barefoot girl before him. Her hair was tangled, her dress faded to the color of old rainwater, but her eyes, sharp and bright, met his without fear. You're the one teaching my daughter? He asked. Skolola nodded quickly, unsure if she was supposed to speak. Yes, sir. He raised an eyebrow. And who taught you? No one, sir, she said. I listened from the fence. Jessica jumped in. She's brilliant, Daddy. She knows everything, even long division. The man's mouth twitched, half amusement, half disbelief. Long division, Yes, sir, Shalola said quietly. Would you like me to show you? For a moment, silence. Then Chief Agu did something neither girl expected. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a pen, and handed it to her. Go on. Shalola bent down, using a flat piece of cardboard as her slate. Her hands were steady as she worked through the problem he gave, every step neat and precise. When she finished, she looked up nervously. Chief Agu crouched to see her work. His brows furrowed, then lifted slightly. The answer was correct. You solved that faster than most of Jessica's tutors, he said. Jessica grinned. I told you. The man straightened, thoughtful. Where do you live, child? By the bridge, sir, with my mother. Your mother? Does she work? She's sick, sir. I take care of her. Something flickered across his face. Pity, perhaps, or guilt. He looked at his daughter, then back at Shalola. Jessica, go wait in the car. Jessica hesitated. She didn't do anything wrong. I know, go. When Jessica was gone, he turned back to Skolola. I don't like secrets around my daughter, but I'm not angry with you. You've done her good. Shalola blinked, unsure what to say. He reached into his jacket, pulling out a small envelope. This is for you. Buy food, clothes, and tell your mother you'll be all right. Her eyes widened as he pressed it into her hand. She could feel the weight of money inside, more than she'd ever held in her life. Why? She asked quietly. Because, he said, his gaze softening, no child who teaches out of love should go hungry. Then he turned and walked away. That night, Shalola opened the envelope under the weak light of a broken street lamp. Inside were crisp bills and a note. You have a gift. Use it well. It wasn't signed, but she didn't need a name. For the first time in years, Shalola allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, the world wasn't done with her yet. The morning after Chief Agu's visit felt like a dream Skolola was afraid to wake from. She kept the envelope close to her chest, hidden under her thin mattress of flattened cardboard. Every few hours she'd touch it, just to make sure it was real. The crisp feel of paper money inside felt like a heartbeat, proof that someone had seen her, believed in her, even for a moment. Her mother was still sleeping when she slipped out to the market. The sun hadn't yet climbed over the rooftops, and the air smelled faintly of charcoal and dew. She used a few of the smallest bills to buy rice, soap, and a pair of worn sandals from a secondhand stall. The vendor looked her over curiously. You get money today, small girl? He asked. Shalola smiled faintly. God sent someone. The man laughed. Then tell God I'd wait for my turn. She walked home barefoot, clutching her purchases. When she reached the bridge, her mother was awake, sitting upright and humming an old tune. Mama, look, Shalola said softly, laying the food and soap before her. Her mother blinked, confusion swirling in her cloudy eyes. You stole again? No, Skolola said, shaking her head quickly. Someone helped us. A rich man. Her mother frowned. Rich men don't see girls like us. For a moment, Shalola couldn't answer. Then she said quietly, He saw me, Mama. and he said, I have a gift. Abini's lips parted as if to speak, but instead she began to hum again, a slow, lilting melody that made the air around them feel softer. Skolola listened, half smiling through tears she didn't understand. A week later, Jessica returned to the mango tree. Skolola, she called, running toward her, her ribbons bouncing in the sunlight. Skolola jumped up, disbelief flashing across her face. You came back? Of course I did, Jessica said. Daddy said I could. Skolola blinked. He said you could? Yes, he even gave me this notebook for us to use. She held up a brand new exercise book, the pages crisp and white. He said we could learn together, as long as we stay near the gate. The world felt suddenly brighter. The lessons began again, though this time there was something different about them. Jessica wasn't just curious. She was driven. She wanted to learn everything Skolola knew, and in turn, she taught Skolola new words, new expressions, stories from books Skolola had never touched. They were no longer just teacher and student. They were mirrors reflecting the best in each other. It wasn't long before the school teachers began to notice Jessica's transformation. Remarkable progress, one of them said during dismissal. Whatever you're doing, keep it up. Jessica grinned, and when she told Skolola later, both girls dissolved into laughter. But behind the laughter was something else, a quiet truth growing between them. Skolola was beginning to believe she could be more than the girl beneath the bridge. One afternoon, while they were reading under the mango tree, a familiar shadow approached. Chief Agu. The girl stood quickly, Jessica smiling. Daddy, look, she's teaching me science today. Chief Agu's gaze softened. He nodded at Skolola. I see that. He stepped closer, his tone gentle but serious. Jessica, wait for me in the car. Jessica frowned. But it's all right, Skolola said softly. Go. I'll be fine. When she was gone, Chief Agu turned back to Skolola. Do you still have the money I gave you? Yes, sir, she said. I used some to buy food and soap, and sandals. He nodded. Good. For a moment, silence stretched between them, filled only by the rustling of mango leaves. Do you still want to go to school? He asked finally. Skolola looked up sharply. More than anything, he exhaled. There's a scholarship program my company sponsors, mostly for children in the rural areas. It's small, but he hesitated, studying her face. You'd have to pass the entrance test. Think you can? Her voice was barely a whisper. Yes, sir. He handed her a folded paper. This is the form. The exam's in 2 weeks. Skolola took it as if it were made of glass. Thank you, sir. You don't owe me thank, he said. Just make sure you're ready. Then, almost as an afterthought, he added, and bring your mother to the clinic near Lekki. I'll arrange for her to be seen. Skolola's breath caught. My mother? He nodded once. No one should have to carry all that alone. That night she couldn't sleep. The paper lay beside her like a fragile secret. She traced her fingers over the printed words she could barely read. Mama, she whispered, you're going to get better. I'm going to learn. And one day, we'll have a real home. Her mother stirred but didn't wake. Outside, the city hummed. Buses, laughter, the endless rhythm of survival. But for the first time, Skolola didn't feel lost in it. She felt like she was part of something bigger. A story still being written, with ink that finally belonged to her. The day of the entrance exam arrived with a restless wind. Skolola stood before the tall gates of the examination center, her second-hand uniform freshly washed, her hands trembling around a pencil she had sharpened until it was nearly a toothpick. She had borrowed it from a neighbor, promising to return it when she became somebody. Children streamed past her in clean clothes, escorted by parents with calm smiles and bottled water. She walked alone. Name? A registrar asked, barely glancing up. Skolola Abini, she said softly. The woman flipped through her list and frowned. Sponsored candidate, right? Yes, Ma. Room 4B and no food allowed inside. Skolola nodded quickly and stepped through the doors. Her stomach churned, not from hunger this time, but from fear. Inside, the classroom was cold from the air conditioning. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and the tiled floors gleamed. Skolola took her seat at the back, next to a girl whose perfume smelled like sugared fruit. When the invigilator handed her the paper, she whispered a prayer. God, please, let this be my chance. The first question was arithmetic. Fractions? She smiled. Easy. The next, comprehension. Then geometry, vocabulary, general knowledge. Her pencil flew, her mind alive with everything she'd memorized through school fences and the lessons under the mango tree. Time disappeared. When the bell rang, she looked up in disbelief. The paper was done, and she wasn't shaking anymore. As she stepped outside, Jessica was waiting near her father's car, grinning from ear to ear. "How did it go?" Jessica called. "I think—" Shkolola hesitated, then laughed. "I think I didn't disgrace myself." Chief Agu, standing by the car, smiled. "Good answer." He gestured toward the back seat. "Get in. You're coming with us for lunch." Shkolola froze. "Sir?" "It's a celebration," he said simply. "You've already won something greater than the test. You showed up." The restaurant was like another planet. White tablecloths, sparkling glasses, people speaking softly as if words cost money. Shkolola sat stiffly, afraid to touch anything. Jessica nudged her. "You can relax, you know." "I don't belong here," Shkolola whispered. "Neither do I," Jessica said, smiling. "Daddy says places only belong to the people brave enough to walk into them." Chief Agu looked up from his newspaper. "Did I say that?" Jessica grinned. "You will." He laughed quietly. "Fair enough." He turned to Shkolola. "Tell me something. When you were teaching Jessica, what did you get out of it?" Shkolola frowned, thinking, "Peace, sir. When I'm teaching, I forget where I am." He nodded slowly. "That's a powerful reason to keep learning." Then after a pause, he said, "Your mother's been moved to the clinic. She's resting comfortably." Her eyes widened. "You did that?" He folded the newspaper. "It was time someone did." She blinked rapidly, unsure how to respond. "Thank you, sir." He looked away, pretending not to notice her tears. "Eat your rice, child. It's getting cold." Days passed in a blur. Jessica visited her at the clinic, helping her mother learn to hold a spoon again. The doctors said Abini's mind was stabilizing, that with rest and medication, she might recover enough to recognize her daughter. Each evening, Shkolola returned to the bridge, not to live there anymore, but to remind herself how far she'd come. One night, she found an old friend from the market watching her. "Ah, small girl," the woman said, squinting. "You look different. You glow now." Shkolola laughed. "I'm just clean, that's all." "No," the woman said. "You're something else now. The city used to chew you. Now it spits you out shining." 2 weeks later, Chief Agu called her to the mansion. Jessica met her at the door, bouncing with excitement. "Results came today." Sholola's heart stopped. "Already?" Jessica nodded, shoving an envelope into her hands. Her name was printed clearly at the top. Abini, Shkolola, passed with distinction. For a moment, the letters blurred. "I passed?" Jessica screamed, jumping up and down. "You didn't just pass, you got the highest score. Daddy said you beat half of Queen's Crest." Chief Agu appeared in the doorway, holding 2 cups of juice. "Half, try more than that." He handed her a cup. "Congratulations, Miss Abini." She stared at him, unable to speak. "Sir, I don't know what to say." "Then say thank you," Jessica said, laughing. Chief Agu chuckled. "She doesn't owe me thanks. She earned this." He looked at her thoughtfully. "You start at Queen's Crest next term. Uniforms, books, tuition, it's all settled." Shkolola's breath caught. "I'm going to school." "Yes," he said simply, "as Jessica's classmate." She looked down at her hands, trembling, and whispered, "God remembered me." Jessica threw her arms around her. "Told you we'd be in the same class one day." That night, Shkolola visited her mother at the clinic. Abini was awake, her eyes clearer than before. "Mama," Shkolola said softly, kneeling beside her, "I'm going to school." Her mother smiled faintly. "School?" "Yes," she said, tears slipping down her cheeks. "The kind with uniforms. The kind you used to dream about for me." Abini reached out, her fingers brushing her daughter's face. "My little teacher," she murmured. "You kept the light alive." Shkolola took her hand, pressing it to her heart. "And now, Mama, I'll make it shine." Outside, the moon hung low over the city, bright, quiet, unashamed of how far it had climbed. The first day of school felt like stepping into a world painted in gold. The morning sun lit the marble gates of Queen's Crest Academy like a promise. Cars lined the road, SUVs, sedans, chauffeurs opening doors for children who carried themselves like tiny royalty. Skolola stood among them, clutching her new satchel, her shoes too shiny, her heart too loud. Jessica spotted her before anyone else. "Skolola!" she called, running across the courtyard, ribbons fluttering behind her. "You made it!" Skolola grinned, though her fingers trembled. "I still can't believe I'm here." Jessica looped her arm through hers. "Believe it, you're officially one of us now." But as they walked toward the assembly hall, Skolola felt the stares, the curious, calculating looks that seemed to ask, "Who is she?" Her uniform fit perfectly, but her past still clung to her like invisible dust. The principal's speech was long and elegant, filled with words like integrity and excellence. Skolola tried to focus, but her mind drifted to her mother, to the bridge, to the mango tree where it all began. When they were dismissed to class, she followed Jessica through winding corridors until they reached a room that smelled faintly of new books and polished floors. Desks gleamed in neat rows. "Sit next to me," Jessica said, pointing to an empty seat by the window. As Skolola settled in, a tall girl in a glittering hair clip whispered loudly to her friend, "That's the scholarship girl, right? The one from the slum?" Her friend giggled. "My dad said Chief Agu adopted her. Can you imagine?" Skolola kept her head down, her face hot. Jessica turned sharply. "That's not true," she said, her tone icy. "She earned her place here." The tall girl smirked. "Sure she did." "Enough," Jessica snapped. "You couldn't even pass a spelling test without your tutor." The classroom went quiet. The teacher entered just then, breaking the tension, but Skolola could still feel the whispers pressing at her back. The days that followed tested her resolve. Math was easy. Numbers obeyed her, steady and predictable. But literature, history, even computer science, all of it moved too fast. The other students had tutors, home libraries, and confidence that came from being told they mattered since birth. Skolola had only grit. Each night she stayed up late, studying by candlelight in her small room near the clinic. She copied notes by hand, whispered definitions to herself, traced maps until her eyes blurred. When exhaustion threatened, she'd close her eyes and picture her mother's faint smile. The way she had said, "You kept the light alive." One Friday after class, she found Jessica waiting under the mango tree that grew behind the school. "You're quiet lately," Jessica said. Skolola shrugged. "Just tired. Everyone here knows things I don't. You'll catch up." "I'm not so sure." Jessica frowned. "You taught me everything I know. You can't give up now." Skolola laughed softly. "Teaching you was easy. You believed in me." Jessica's voice dropped. "Then borrow my belief until you find yours again." Something in that sentence landed deep inside Skolola, a small flame reigniting. Midterm exams arrived like a storm. For 3 days, the air around the school felt electric, whispers in hallways, pages turning like nervous wings. Skolola filled every answer sheet with precision and care, her pen moving as though guided by something greater than fear. When results were posted, the courtyard buzzed. Jessica came running. "You did it!" "Did what?" Skolola asked cautiously. "You're top of the class." The words didn't register at first. Then she saw it, her name printed neatly beside the number 1. For a long moment she just stared, her breath caught, her chest tight with disbelief. Students around her murmured. Even the tall girl with the glittering hair clip looked stunned. Jessica threw her arms around her. "I told you," she said through laughter. "You were born for this," Chief Agu called that evening. "Your teacher sent me the report," he said over the phone. His voice carried quiet pride. "You've done something extraordinary." "Thank you, sir," he paused. "Do you remember the day I first saw you under that mango tree?" "Yes, sir. I thought you were just a poor girl with quick hands. But now I see you're something far rarer. You're proof that brilliance doesn't ask permission." Skolola felt tears prick her eyes. "I only wanted to learn." "And you did," he said softly. "But you also taught us, me, Jessica, everyone, that kindness can rewrite destiny." She didn't know what to say, so she whispered the only truth she had. "Thank you for seeing me, sir." That night, as rain began to fall outside her window, she took out her old notebook, the one she had used behind the fence years ago. The pages were brittle now, filled with crooked letters and faded sums. On the last page, she wrote one new line. The girl who listened outside the classroom now sits inside it. She smiled at the words, feeling the world tilt slightly, like it was finally balancing. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new whispers, maybe even new storms. But for the first time, Shalola wasn't afraid. She had earned her place in the light, and she wasn't stepping out again. By the time the second term began, Shalola had found her rhythm, but success had a way of stirring quiet storms. Her grades remained top of the class, her teachers often using her work as examples. For some, she was a source of inspiration. For others, a reminder of everything they wanted to hide about themselves. And as admiration grew, so did envy. It started small. Whispers in the hallway, missing notebooks, smirks when she passed. Jessica defended her fiercely, but even she couldn't be everywhere. One afternoon during lunch, Shalola found her textbook soaked through in the bathroom sink. The pages sagged, ink bleeding like wounds. She stood frozen, staring at the ruined pages. Then from behind her came a voice, calm, almost amused. Maybe next time you won't show off so much. It was the tall girl with the glittering hair clip. Aita. Skalola's throat tightened. I never showed off. Adesua crossed her arms. You think because the chief pays your fees, you belong here? You don't. People like us work for people like him, not sit beside them. Skolola said nothing. She simply picked up her dripping books and walked out. Adesua's laughter followed her down the hall, cold and sharp as glass. That evening, Skolola stayed late in the classroom, drying her notes under the desk lamp. Jessica came in quietly, holding 2 cups of hot chocolate. Who did it? She asked. It doesn't matter, Shalola murmured. It matters to me. Skolola smiled faintly. If I let it matter, I'll lose focus. Jessica frowned. You always do that. Pretend you're fine when you're breaking. I broke before, Shalola said, looking up. This time, I'll bend instead. Jessica didn't argue. She just sat with her, sipping chocolate in silence. 2 weeks later, Queen's Crest announced its annual debate competition. The prize, a scholarship to a prestigious leadership camp. When the teacher read the shortlist, Shalola's name was on it, alongside Adesua's. Jessica nearly squealed. Oh, this is perfect. You'll beat her fair and square. But Shalola shook her head. This isn't about her. Jessica smirked. Then what is it about? Proving to myself that I belong. The topic was announced a week later. Can wealth buy happiness? The irony wasn't lost on her. Adesua, assigned to argue for the motion, smirked as she passed Shalola in the hall. Careful, she whispered. You'll sound ungrateful if you pretend money doesn't matter. Remember who paid for your uniform. Skolola clenched her fists but said nothing. The day of the debate arrived with the heat of mid-season sun. The auditorium buzzed with excitement, parents and students crowding the seats. Chief Agu sat quietly near the front beside Jessica, watching. When Skolola's turn came, she walked to the podium slowly, her steps deliberate. She glanced at the judges, the crowd, then took a deep breath. My opponent argues that wealth can buy happiness, she began, but I've seen wealth buy silence, loneliness, and fear. Happiness, on the other hand, can live under a bridge if you guard it well enough. A ripple of surprise ran through the hall. She continued, her voice steady but charged with feeling. When you've eaten from trash bins, you learn that laughter doesn't come from gold plates. When you've taught someone without a chalkboard, you learn that fulfillment doesn't wear a suit. Money can build a house, but it can't build a home. Jessica leaned forward, eyes shining. Chief Agu's face remained unreadable, but his fingers tightened around his pen. By the time Shalola finished, the hall was silent. Then the applause erupted, loud, long, unstoppable. Adesua's face went pale. The judges announced the results minutes later. Skolola, first place. After the crowd dispersed, Chief Agu approached her. You spoke from truth, not pride, he said quietly. That's rarer than you know. Skolola bowed her head. Thank you, sir. He placed a hand on her shoulder. Keep walking that line, child. The world will try to pull you to either side. Pity or arrogance. Stay in the middle. That's where wisdom lives. Jessica ran up, hugging her tight. You did it! You're going to the camp! Shkalola smiled, though her eyes glistened. We did it. But when she turned, she saw Adeshwa standing near the door, watching silently. Her expression not anger this time, but something that looked almost like shame. That night, Shalola visited her mother again. Abini was sitting up, a blanket around her shoulders, her eyes clearer than ever. You look proud, her mother said softly. I am, Shalola whispered. They said I spoke well today. Her mother smiled faintly. You always did, even when no one listened. Shalola knelt beside her, resting her head on her mother's lap. Mama, sometimes I still feel like that girl by the fence. Abini stroked her hair. Don't forget her. She's the reason you're here. The words sank deep into Shalola's heart. Outside, thunder rumbled across the horizon. Not a storm this time, but a promise of change. She closed her eyes, listening to the rain begin again. It didn't sound cruel anymore. It sounded like applause from heaven. The leadership camp was held in the hills outside the city. A sprawling campus with dormitories, glass-walled classrooms, and the scent of pine trees heavy in the air. It was a place where the country's brightest students came to sharpen their voices and visions. Shalola arrived with a small duffel bag and a heart full of disbelief. The bus that brought her curved along a mountain road, each turn revealing a view that looked nothing like the gray streets she'd grown up in. Jessica had wanted to come, but the program was for scholarship candidates only. Still, she had hugged Shalola tightly before the bus left. Promise you'll come back stronger, Jessica said. Shalola smiled, and smarter. The days at the camp were grueling. Mornings began at dawn with leadership drills, followed by team debates, public speaking workshops, and problem-solving sessions that tested endurance as much as intellect. For the first time, Shalola was surrounded by students who were not just privileged but brilliant, children of professors, judges, and ministers. Their words carried weight. Their confidence filled rooms. At first, she felt small again, like the girl behind the fence, invisible and out of place. But something inside her refused to shrink. When others hesitated to take the podium, she volunteered. When teams needed a strategist, she stayed up late drafting plans by flashlight. When a fellow student stumbled during a presentation, she was the first to clap. By the end of the first week, even the instructors had started to notice. Miss Abini, one of them said after class, you speak like someone who's been silenced before. That's a strength most people never learn. Shalola bowed her head. Thank you, sir. One evening after a long debate, she sat alone by the lake. The water reflected the sky, streaked with orange and violet. For a moment, she could almost see the mango tree there, the one where she used to teach Jessica, barefoot and hopeful. A boy from her team approached. His name was Tunde, confident but kind, the type of student everyone gravitated toward. You're quiet tonight, he said, sitting beside her. Just thinking, Shalola replied. About home, she smiled faintly. About how far home feels. He nodded, skipping a pebble across the surface. You know, most of us came here to compete, but you're here to change things. She looked at him, startled. What makes you say that? Because you argue like it matters. He grinned. That's rare. For the first time, she allowed herself to laugh, soft, genuine, and unguarded. The final challenge of the camp was announced at the end of the second week. Each student was to design a social impact project that could improve their community. The winning idea would receive full sponsorship from a national foundation. Skalola's mind raced. She thought about her mother, the children at the market, the hundreds of kids who listened through school fences the way she once did. Her idea came in a rush, simple but real. A street school, a mobile classroom made of donated materials, where volunteers could teach underprivileged kids basic reading, writing, and math. A school that could move anywhere, bridges, markets, alleys, bringing education to those who couldn't reach it. When she presented her idea, her voice didn't tremble once. I was one of those children, she said to the judges, and I know what it means to want to learn when the world says you don't belong in a classroom. I want to change that. Not someday, now. The room went silent when she finished. Then came applause, steady, rising, thunderous. That night she sat outside again, staring at the stars. Tunde found her there, grinning. They announced it, he said breathlessly. You won! Shalola froze. What? Your project. They're going to fund it. The street school. You did it! For a long moment she couldn't speak. Tears welled in her eyes, not the kind born from pain, but from disbelief. She whispered, Mama will hear this. She has to. When the camp ended, the bus ride back to the city felt like traveling through her own story in reverse. The mountains shrinking, the roads familiar again. But inside, everything had changed. Jessica and Chief Agu were waiting at the terminal. Jessica ran first, wrapping her arms around her. Tell me it's true. It's true, Shalola said, laughing through her tears. They're building it, our school. Chief Agu's expression was one of quiet pride. You've done something extraordinary again. I only followed what you taught me, she said, to walk the middle path. He smiled. And now others will walk because you made the road. That evening, Shalola visited her mother, who was resting peacefully by the window of the clinic. Mama, she whispered, taking her hand. They're building a school, one for the children like us. Her mother's lips curved faintly. You built it from your heart, she murmured. That's where real schools begin. Shalola pressed her forehead to her mother's hand. Outside, the city hummed, a million lights flickering like tiny promises. For the first time, the world didn't feel divided between the rich and the poor, the seen and unseen. It felt like one story, finally connected. And she was writing it. The day the street school opened, the sky was wide and clean, the kind of blue that felt like a beginning. The small crowd that gathered under the overpass near the market was a mixture of the forgotten and the hopeful. Vendors, beggars, barefoot children, and a few journalists who had come to see the girl whose dream had outgrown the bridge she once called home. A line of wooden benches stood neatly beneath a large banner painted in bright colors. The Mango Tree School, learning anywhere for everyone. Skolola stood at the front, wearing a crisp white blouse and a heart that wouldn't stop trembling. Jessica, beaming with pride, clapped her hands to gather attention. Ladies and gentlemen, today isn't about charity, it's about change. She turned to Shalola. And this is the girl who started it all. The crowd applauded. Some cheered. Chief Agu stood a few paces away, arms folded, smiling faintly. Behind him were stacks of donated books, a portable chalkboard, and volunteers ready to teach. Skolola stepped forward. The microphone squeaked and her stomach flipped. But when she looked around at the faces of the children peering up at her with the same hunger she once had, her fear melted. I used to sit just over there, she said, pointing to the crumbling wall by the bridge. I listened to classes I couldn't attend and dreamed of the day I'd be allowed inside. I didn't know that one day I'd build a place where the wall no longer mattered. The crowd was silent now. Even the traffic above seemed to hush. She continued, her voice steady. This school is for every child who's been told they don't belong. For every mother who's prayed for a chance her child never got. For every teacher who believes knowledge can grow anywhere, even under a bridge. Jessica wiped at her eyes. Chief Agu stepped forward as the applause began again, this time stronger, deeper. Skolola Abini, he said, you've reminded us that wealth means nothing if it doesn't lift others. You've made me proud, not as a benefactor, but as a student of your courage. Skolola bowed her head, tears shining. Then came the moment she had waited for, her mother's arrival. Abini had been improving steadily, and with the clinic's help, she could now walk short distances. She was led forward slowly by a nurse, her shawl wrapped tight, her eyes alert and clear. Mama, Skolola whispered, rushing to her side. Abini smiled. You brought the classroom to me, my little teacher. No, Skolola said softly. I brought it to them. Her mother's gaze swept over the children, the books, the laughter beginning to ripple through the crowd. And now, she murmured, you are what you were meant to be. As the lessons began, Shalola watched in awe. Children huddled around the chalkboard, tracing letters for the first time. A volunteer led them in song. Jessica handed out pencils, laughing as the kids chased her for extras. The sound, the hum of learning, rose and filled the air like music. Skolola turned to Chief Agu. Do you think it'll last? he smiled. If it comes from truth, it will outlive us all. She nodded, watching as one of the smaller boys raised his hand eagerly. His eyes shone with the same fire she once carried. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe this wasn't just a beginning. It was a legacy. Weeks passed, and the Mango Tree School became more than a bridgeside project. With Chief Agu's help and growing public attention, new branches began to open in slums, markets, and remote villages. Volunteers came from universities and NGOs, all trained under Skolola's model. She moved between them tirelessly, teaching, planning, mentoring. Each school carried the same motto she had written by hand on the first banner: no walls, no limits. One afternoon, as she rested under a real mango tree near one of the new sites, Jessica found her sketching in a notebook. "What are you drawing this time?" Jessica asked. "A dream," Shalola said, smiling. "A bigger one." Jessica rolled her eyes affectionately. "You never stop. Would you if the world kept growing with you?" Jessica grinned. "Then I'll keep growing too." They sat together for a while in silence, the breeze carrying the sound of laughter from the children nearby. That evening, Shalola visited her mother once more. Abini sat by the window of their small but bright apartment, the same one Chief Agu had arranged near the clinic, now filled with books and plants. "Look at you," her mother said, reaching out a trembling hand. "The whole city speaks your name." Shalola knelt, taking her hand gently. "It's not my name they should remember, Mama. It's the children's voices." Abini smiled. "Then you've already won." Outside, the sunset painted the sky gold. Months later, Skolola stood before a hall filled with educators, donors, and government officials. She was being honored for her contribution to education reform. The applause was thunderous, but when she stepped up to the podium, her first words silenced the room. "I don't accept this award for myself," she said softly. "I accept it for a little girl who once sat outside a fence and listened. For every child still listening from the other side. We can't rest until every voice can answer back." She looked down at the gold plaque in her hands and smiled. Not the smile of someone who had reached the end, but of someone who had finally seen the horizon clearly. Later that night, she returned to the old bridge. The air was quiet, the streetlights humming. The spot where she once huddled with her mother had been transformed. The new school stood there now, bright with murals painted by children. She sat for a moment, listening to the city breathe. Then she whispered, "We did it, Mama." A soft wind passed through the trees, and for a fleeting second, she thought she heard her mother's voice. Clear, proud, unbroken. "My little teacher." Shalola smiled, tears glinting like stars. She rose, straightened her shoulders, and walked into the light.